Welcome to another episode of the Unconventional Christian Podcast, and I am sitting here with the amazing bestseller, my family, my friend, Tiffany Aliche, aka the Budgetnista, or I should say the Budgetnista, aka Tiffany Aliche. What's going on, Tiff?
I'm good, dude. How are you?
I am blessed, and that sounds so cliche. Blessed, and highly favored. Nah, I'm turned up, man. I'm so happy to be here. You was actually my first intended guest for this.
Oh, really?
Intended, but I got to get on that schedule, man. Life is crazy and it's moving fast. Before we kick off the podcast, I always kick off the podcast with a prayer. So can we bow our heads and for a prayer real quick? Father God, thank you for bringing us here to have us in this space, to have this opportunity, to have this conversation together. Father God, we're asking that you sit us both down and you stand up. We are asking that you bless this fellowship, this conversation, that it's fruitful, that it's changing lives, and that you lead us and continue to give us a hunger for you in all we do. Keep you at the center of everything we do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Tiff, what's up? What's going on with you?
Just been honestly busy, but in a good way. I just love the fact that people are so wide open to financial education right now. So it's been like a pleasure to be able to serve more people.
Yes. Can we talk about 3 weeks on the New York Times best-selling list? Yes. Can we talk about it, man? Talk about support.
Yeah.
Yo, this is amazing. This is so amazing to have. I'm walking around with it. I'm sitting in Starbucks the other day, and somebody's like, "Oh my God, I have that book." Then another book, I promise you, I'm sitting there in Starbucks. Somebody said, "I just got that book. That's a great read." I'm like, you know what I say, right?
What? That's my cousin. That's every Nigerian's response. I'm like, well,
it's my cousin. They were like, "Oh, you Evo?" I was like, "Oh, well, like my mom and her mom, they kind of, she's my family."
No, that is so, I love that, honestly. Oh, wow, that's so awesome. You know what I'm really waiting for? So when I see it out in the wild, like at like, maybe being at like an airport or whatever, and see someone with the book in their hand, I'm going to flip out.
That's you know how much of a manifester you are, because it takes levels to get to certain levels of manifestation. I think you're there. So I feel like you're going to airport this weekend. I don't know, are you flying yet?
No, I'm not.
You're not flying yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Nah, I feel you. That's great, man. So proud of you on everything that you have going on. And I think that, as you know, this is the Unconventional Christian Podcast, and we just try to have these conversations where we talk about some important things that are necessary for us as a people. For me, that's very important, is breaking some of these generational curses. And a lot of times generational curses coming from our community, especially even just being two Nigerian people, is always spiritual, right? So in that sense, for you, how important has it been to like help people break these curses? Because a lot of it's more financial than spiritual now.
Well, I mean, even for myself, I had some it's mindset things that just held me in bondage, So I'll give you an example. I remember I moved out of my parents' house, and I was like, I think I was like 22. I graduated college, stayed home for a year to save money, moved out. And normally my dad and my mom kind of told me what to do with my money, especially my father, since he was a CFO and an accountant. But when I moved out, I realized how little I knew what to do on my own without being like, what next? And I remember I was reading all of these financial books to try to figure out, how to be grown on my own. And they just seemed like mumbo jumbo. And I could distinctly remember, I could see it in my mind's eye. I was in this little 2-bedroom house that my sister and I were renting. I was sitting on this blue couch. A friend of mine had given us her old couch, and I got some couch cover that was navy blue. And I remember literally sitting on that couch and praying and saying, God, I don't understand these things, and I'm worried because I don't want to move back home. And I made a promise. I said, I promise, God, if you show me, I will show others. I made that promise, 22 years old, sitting on a secondhand couch in my first apartment. Wow. And all the books I began reading after that, it was like I was seeing them with new eyes. Wow. Like I understood. I was like, oh, duh, that's how you do this. That's how, and I really credit that. And so for the first few years, God allowed me to just absorb as much information as possible. I was rocking with my debt, my credit, and I was doing good. I forgot about the other part. If you will show me, I will show others. I'm like, I'm on, we're on Tiffany right now. And I remember being called to start to show others. And I was like, okay, I showed my sister. And then like maybe some friends. And God was like, no. So I was teaching preschool at the time. And it was maybe like 7 years into teaching my 10-year stint into teaching preschool. And the show others part was growing stronger. Like I would hear it all the time. And I'd be like, I show the parents today. I am. I help my sister. And it was like, that's not what I said. Like you asked for this blessing. Right. This is the blessing that is meant to bless you, but pass through you to bless others. So it got stronger and stronger and stronger. And then finally in 2019, one day I got a phone call. Your daycare center is now closed. You don't have a job. And it was like, go show others. Like,
now I was like, clear as day.
Yes. And even then I fought against it because I was like, well, I don't know. I'm not an expert. He's like, and so that's how the Budgetnista really started. It was that I prayed for a thing. I received the thing that I prayed for, but I'd made a promise that I was nervous, afraid, or just unqualified that I felt to keep. And it was like, no, if I call you, I've qualified you. Wow. And it's not nothing else you do is going to work out. Oh, wow. I remember I was like, I'm going to do event planning. That didn't work out. Oh, I'm going to do that. Nothing literally worked out until I came back and was like, okay. So I just started volunteering, teaching financial education in my community. And then I got a contract with the United Way. And I've just learned, it was such a valuable lesson that I learned to remain in alignment with what I was called to do. And I will always be fine. Anytime that I try to sway to the left or sway to the right, it's like, that's cute over there, but you'll be by yourself over there. Come back. Out of the will. Yes, come back to where I put you and you won't have to worry. That's why that book, 3 weeks on the New York Times bestsellers list, 3 weeks on the Wall Street Journal bestsellers list, USA Today, Publishers Weekly, Amazon, Apple, almost every book list out there, this book has made. But that's because it's not me. That is me being in alignment with my assignment. This is my go show others.
Oh my God. Yep. You are giving me a verbal tongue lashing. Now I have to sit back. It's crazy. I feel like I have to sit back and be like, what did God tell you to do? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because we talk about this all the time. I feel like it's so many, like, you say so much in so little that I'm like, oh my God, I was going to touch that. So the first thing that I thought about, now this is something I've thought about over the last couple of days, coming up to this interview. Mm-hmm. Do you look at yourself as a servant of God in the sense that, I'd say even to extent, I'd even call you a prophet specifically because God has called you to minister this message to people that is changing their lives. This is like God said, you do this. This is like, because in the new day and age, this is probably where it's Tiffany, the Budgetnista chapter, verse 3 will be in the future Bibles, because it's you being obedient to the calling of God that's allowing you to step up and change lives. You know what I mean? Because the prophet that people look at now, you think of the church, you think of evangelists, you think of T.D. Jakes, but there are prophets out there that are not walking around waving a cross, but they are being obedient to God's calling. Do you feel like you're stepping into that place of service / if I'd even say being a prophet of God in that sense?
I don't know. I just feel like I have been 100,000% know that I have been called to teach. That like, I know that, like, I knew from a little girl that I was supposed to be a teacher. Like that was already like shown, like you are a teacher. And I taught Sunday school. I taught when I babysat. I know I know everybody doesn't know their clear purpose, but I know mine. Right. It's like, now I'm not always wanted to do it, but it's always been very clear that, Tiffany, you have been called to teach. That is your gift. And through that gift, I will bless you and other people. But if you don't want to do that, then whatever you do, you're on your own, because there's no way I could have done this. Like, I don't think people understand with a book, like, people come out with books all the time. About 100,000 books come out every year, 100,000. Less than 0.5% make it on the New York Times bestsellers list.
Right.
Less than 0.5%, let alone your first book, let alone not one list, but 2 lists. How can I make that happen? I can't. You know, that it's not by my works, like even just like the growth of the brand and the company. Yes, I work hard, but lots of people work hard. It's not by my hand or by my works. You know, it's really that I tell people all the time that sometimes we work so hard because we think that it's really us lifting it. I liken it to, you ever walk with like a little kid and they want to carry their book bag, or they want to carry the bag and it's too heavy for them. Right. So you're holding it from the top and they're holding at the bottom and they think that they're carrying it.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I got it. But it's you. That's what I really liken, like what's happening with me and God. That like, I'm like, look, I got the Budgetnista. But I'm the kid thinking, God's like, meanwhile, I'm doing all the lifting. She just got her hand on it. And she, you know, she thinks like this little effort is doing something. My effort cannot move the mountains that have been moved. That's not what the effort, that's not why even this is for anyone listening, the efforts that you put in, because it's not you, because at any moment there could be a leak in the ceiling of where I'm sitting right now. And I could have a plumber come and he open it up and there's $1 million worth of diamonds that were stashed there 50 years ago. Right. That could like literally, God doesn't need all of he could just be like, there's some diamonds in the ceiling. He don't need you in order to make things happen. Right. But you put in the work as your like, it's almost like your toll of obedience to say, you know, I'm putting in the work, although it's not my work that generates this blessing, because he doesn't need you to generate any blessing. He can make anything happen at any moment, at any time. And I'm conscious of that, but I put in the work, you know, to be respectful of the fact that, like, you know, I'm grateful for this blessing. And I know that, I'm not taking it for granted that the things that are happening, you know, are a blessing. To me, the best sermon I ever remember listening to when I was in high school, and it's stuck with me since, is my pastor said that you have to remember, in every blessing there is excess, that a blessing is meant for you to enjoy some, but also to share some. Right. So let's just say you're beautiful, like Halle Berry or Angela Bassett. You are meant to, like, enjoy your beauty, but also use your beauty. Like Angela Bassett might champion cancer causes, but we pay attention because of the way she looks. Halle Berry might champion, I don't know, like, some childhood disease, diabetes, but we listen because she's beautiful, right? You might have like the brain of the like most brilliant scientist. Use that blessing for yourself to advance your career, but then you're also supposed to use that to find the cure for cancer. And so in every blessing, you have to remember that it is for you to enjoy and to pass on through the excess. And so as long as you do that, like what happens is I get elevated. I get a blessing, I enjoy some, I give some. God says, well done, next level. Right. I get that blessing, I enjoy some, I give some. God says, well done, next level. As long as you keep doing his will, that elevation, that the sky is the limit. When I tell you, the sky is the limit of how, as long as I stay in alignment. Every once in a while, I'll veer to the left because I'll start feeling myself like, I did this. And he's like, okay, without me, let's see. Carry the bag without me. Oh, it's heavy, huh? Yeah. Right. Because your little finger on that bag is not moving it, man. And so I just think that, like, I'm just a testament to being and remaining in alignment with God's will for you. Yeah. Sometimes I don't know, like, I'm not always clear on the voice or the message or what am I supposed to do, but then I just remind myself, at the very least, you're supposed to teach. Right. So sometimes I'll just randomly go live because I'm feeling like out of alignment. I'm like, well, go live, girl, teach a whole lesson. Something that maybe somebody might pay for, but like teach. Yeah. Like if you don't know how to do anything else, do the thing that he called you to do. So I'm like, well, I've been called to teach, so I will. But yeah, it's been.
Yeah, I'm honestly, telling you, you're preaching to me right now, because like, and this is something I talk about it all the time, and sometimes you need a reminder from somebody else from a different perspective, because I could talk about it with people, but sometimes you don't get that common ground that's necessary for that conversation. But now that obedience is so important, because obedience is like, and I've said it numerous times, like if you're obedient when God first put it on your heart, it won't feel like a sacrifice. Yes. You know what I mean? Because like God still in my mind, God's still going to bless you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it's so funny. I was talking about this with Michelle Williams was on last week, and she said, delayed obedience is still disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So there are repercussions for that. You know what I mean? It may mean your purpose, your blessing that you were supposed to get, and you were supposed to flourish all your 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Now you get it in your 60s.
Yes.
You don't get me wrong, you still get the blessing.
But yep.
It's just as delayed as your obedience.
Mm-hmm. Because it's like I told you, it was like God was telling me it's time to walk away from the preschool. You've learned I needed you to come here to learn to teach. That's why I brought you here. I did not bring you here to stay here. I'm like, no, I love it. It's easy. Leave me alone. Okay. Right. So it was like one financial drama after another before you know that center was literally shut down. And so for 5 years, I struggled. I was living off couches. I had to rent a room. You know, I lost my house to foreclosure, all of that. Had I left what he said, and then, you know, look at all that was waiting for me. This is what I was afraid of. Right. You know, like this is my obedience brought me here, but it's like, well, now you're gonna have to go through it because I done told you to leave. But you know, that's cute. But you're gonna learn. So I've learned to. It's hard sometimes because you don't know the way, and you're just like, but I like it here. It's so comfortable. It's like, but God is really bringing you to the next level, and if you would just say yes and do what you're called to do, like, I mean, all the things, all the desires and dreams of your heart, literally stuff that I used to write that in my journal, and my impossible goals and dreams are like so small, you know? Right. Like, I remember I was like sleeping on Tracy's couch for like a year, my sister. And it was a struggle because she had a 1-bedroom. And I was like, I'm gonna be out in 3 months. Yeah. 12 months later, I was like, hey, I need more time. She was like, you're right out of time. You got to go back to mommy and daddy. I already told my parents that I was all good. So I did not want to go back home because I knew they was going to make me get a regular job. Right. And I remember writing down like all that I wanted to do, like how much I wanted to give back, how I want to take care of my parents. I wrote down all of my goals and dreams and how much I wanted to travel. And then I quantified it and said, girl, you would have to make $300,000 a year to make this fictional life of yours happen. Right. And I was like, dang. But you know what? I put it down and I said, okay, still, you never know. I put it down and now last year, my companies combined made over $10 million. That was like 7 years ago that I wrote that down. Mm-hmm. So like that 300, God was like, if you would just listen, hardhead, these little peanuts that you're talking about is nothing in comparison to what I have for you. Oh my God. These are like, you know what I mean? I don't know why it's so like, don't get me wrong. And this is not like fake excitement. It's like when I hear it, it's the confirmation sometimes that's necessary because a lot of people don't understand how we stay stuck on certain levels and certain chapters of our life because we weren't obedient somewhere. I've been doing this thing called the prayer room on Instagram. I saw it. And I was talking about chapters, and I was saying sometimes we get to certain chapters in our life where it just seems like, man, I can't get to the next chapter. And it's because in chapter 2, 3, 4, or 5, where somewhere we were called to be obedient, to listen to something, to grasp something, to learn something, the tools that's necessary to go into the next chapter, we left it in those back chapters. So you gotta go on back. Gotta go back and do the homework. And that's the same thing we've been talking about, like in the prayer room. We just talk about specifically about like dealing with, we have to deal with some of these things from our past in order for us to move forward. You know what I'm saying? I believe that. And that just goes out to the same thing with our parents, whatever it is, when it comes down to like specifically, and when we talk about this book, the great thing, and I want to just commend this book. One thing about this book is that it's definitely this is very close to, I think a child could read this. Yes. I feel like a 7-year-old, if you left them in a room with this and they have nothing else to do and they read this, they would actually finish the book not in some time. They wouldn't do it the same day, but if they read it like, this is not something a kid would look at and say, I don't understand this. Yeah. And it was intentional. So when I wrote Get Good with Money, I was intentional that I pulled forth when I used to teach preschool. What does it take to take somebody from a place of no knowledge to knowledge? That is the reason why I'm very clear. And I didn't know why God put me in teaching preschool, because even the way I got there was so strange. I'm like, how am I teaching preschool? He put me there to learn to teach.
Right.
Because anybody who is an administrator of any type of school will tell you, you put your best teacher with the youngest children. Because, moment. Because there's no point of reference. So if you're in high school and I'm teaching you from a place where you have building blocks already. Right. Literally, when you're teaching preschool, you might say to a little kid, okay, we're going to talk about the color red today. Red like an apple. And a 3-year-old might say, what's an apple? Right. And you're like, oh, wait. So now you're literally teaching the foundational fundamentals just to teach the basics. Right. So I got to go back just for you to understand. Okay, now that you know what an apple is, now we could talk about red. And so learning after 10 years of learning how to teach, to bring a being from no knowledge whatsoever. Some kids don't even know their name. Like your name is Ladun, and you might come and say, 3 years old, what's your name? Dooney. Because that's what they call you at home. So now I've got to teach you that your name is Ladun. And you're like, no, it's Dooney. You're like, so now you're like, okay. And mommy's name is not mommy. Mommy's name is Patricia. Like, I'm telling you, the fundamental stuff you have to do, it takes an extraordinary teacher to teach such a young age, because there's no blocks. You are literally forming the building blocks. And so that is why when you read Get Good with Money, what you're seeing is, so I was obedient to going to preschool because I went to school for business, and I thought to myself, like, okay, like there was a job offer that was made to me. It was like $50,000 a year. And I hated that internship where I had the job offer, but then I really, something in my heart said I wanted to teach. Right. And I know that God put it in my heart, but I was afraid because all my friends were becoming doctors and lawyers and this, Nigerian way, engineers and pharmacists.
Exactly.
And I was like, I'm going to teach. And then worse off, I couldn't, because I didn't have my teaching degree. I couldn't teach any older grades. I had to start in preschool, go back to school. I went to Keene, I went to Montclair State for my business degree. And then I went to Keene to get my teaching certificate. And so here I am with a bachelor's degree teaching preschool, and people were like, oh. But no, God brought me there. He said, because this is the key, door 2 that you need to pick up. So when I take you to door 9, you're ready.
Right.
So I just thought he brought me there to be a teacher. He's like, no, I brought you there to learn to teach. And then I got comfortable, didn't want to leave. He said, you're not here to stay here. You're here to collect a skill set that you're going to need for my assignment for you.
That's the part of the journey that a lot of people don't understand. Yes. How necessary it is to be obedient in the beginning.
Yes.
When God first puts it on your heart. You know what I mean? Because sometimes, like, if you could have, let's just say you would have skipped the process, right? Don't get me wrong. The Budgetnista still may have come out. Mm-hmm. You still may have had all the success, but the ability to put this into this form,
yes,
where everyone is like, I understand this.
Yes.
It's not feel like I am reading Warren Buffett's whatever, because this is for everybody.
Yes.
This is for everybody. This is not just like, oh,
what you're reading is the key that I picked up in door 2. It's like literally, like in the book, I tell you that each chapter is going to be broken down in 3 parts: plan, do, review. That is literally, when preschool, they teach you, this is how you write your curriculum. So I am literally educating you the way I would a 3 and 4-year-old. That's why you're like, I get it. I don't feel overwhelmed, because I know, because that the plan is, so if I'm teaching you, like, so for those of you listening, my book is called Get Good with Money, 10 Simple Steps to Becoming Financially Whole. So are these 10 steps, each step is broken down by plan, do, review. So step 1 is budgeting. I let you know, the plan lets you know, this is what we're going to do today. So imagine in preschool, we're going to learn the letter A today.
Right.
So it sets the tone. But for you as an adult, is in this budgeting chapter, you're going to learn how to create a budget, something written and visible, how to open up the correct bank accounts, and how to semi or fully automate it. So now when you're reading the chapter, you're not wondering, where are we going? I tell you in the beginning, adults need that kind of like, got you. Then the do. The do is the actual lesson. Here's step by step how to budget. I give you homework along the way so we could check for understanding. I explain ad nauseum. I give you visuals if necessary. Those are the do's. Same thing. The do for preschool is, all right, we're learning A, go to the art area, draw your A. Go to block area, make A's with blocks. Go to the library area, read A books. And then the review is what you do at the end of the day with kids, when we basically go through the day, and it's a mirror of the plan. Did you learn how to make your budget? Is it visible? Do you have the bank accounts necessary? Is it automated or semi-automated? So that plan, do, review is literally the preschool teacher curriculum.
Right.
But that's a tool. How could there's no way for me to put that into a book without having lived that for 10 years and knowing that it works, because I was mindful in writing the book how intimidating financial education can be, how intimidating the process can be. But also too, I noticed that people were succeeding. Like I have this Facebook group called Dream Catchers Live Richer with the Budgetnista. And I was noticing that people were like, yay, my credit score is awesome. Or yay, I have savings. Or yay, I have budget. But never, yay, I'm holistically doing well financially.
Right.
And I realized like, you got your numbers, but not your letters. You got your letters, but not the shapes. You got the shapes, but not the colors. And I thought, how do I give you access to the full financial picture you need to literally be good with your money? And so that's why I wrote it, because I wanted to walk the reader through, starting with budgeting, ending with estate planning. Here's what you do step by step by step. You don't have to do every step right now, but when you're ready, you might be like, you know what, I'm ready to update my insurance. You can go to the insurance chapter and walk you through exactly what you need. It just feels so good. Like, it's like, that is my overflow. That is in every blessing, there's excess. Like that, I've used all of my 10 steps to financial wholeness to make myself financially whole. And because there's such an overflow, I wrote that book from the overflow, and that's what you're receiving.
And it's so fun when you say that overflow. I think that, and I was reading, and it's so funny, you see memes somewhere, but I was a friend of mine, she said the overflow occurs when you start pouring from the saucer, not from the cup. You know what I mean? Like, because the overflow, you're pouring from
from like your divine power from God. Yes, you're right.
Yes, you're pouring. Now you're pouring from the saucer. You're not even pouring from the cup anymore.
I love that, because it's. I mean, overflow has been such a theme in my life. I mean, one time I went to this conference. It was this. It's called the woman. It's literally called Conferences for Women. It's the largest series of conferences across the country. The one I spoke at, Serena Williams spoke on the main stage. It was like 60,000 women in attendance.
Right.
And I was so nervous. So they gave me like a breakout room. They're like, okay, Tiffany, this is your room. And I remember I had gone into like the main kind of like, I guess it was like a bazaar. It's almost, if you think of Essence Fest, it's like, they have like all the booths and all the like people who are selling stuff, and then you could break out and go to your room. So I was in that main area, and I saw a woman that I knew in the finance community, and she was like, oh my gosh, Tiffany, what are you doing here? I said, oh, I'm speaking. And she's like, oh, that's great. I want to come see you. Where are you speaking? And I showed her like, like my number was like room number 1129. And so we looked on the map, and she was like, wow, why do they have you so far out? So I was already nervous, and I was like, she's like, when I spoke here, they had me like on the semi-main stage. And I was like, oh my goodness. Right. She was like, wow. So I mean, my heart was racing. And so I was like, I just thought to myself, wow, they must not think I bring value. No one's gonna come. It's so far out. And even the way they named my class, it was a really bad name. It was like, it was they basically messed up everything. And I remember thinking like, wow, you know what? I mean, it is what it is. So I remember walking to the class, like to go, and I was going to go early, like 20, 30 minutes early to set up. And I was like, I'm walking. It was at least like a 6-7 minute walk. I'm like, they got me all the way at the end of the conference. Right. So I get there and I see all these people, and I'm like, okay, the other speaker is not done yet. And they didn't leave. And I'm like, who are all these people here for? And the girl was like, we're here for somebody called the Budgetnista. I'm like, wait, what? The room was packed. Right. So much so that people were outside looking. And I was just like, what? So I did it probably was like 200 people that could fit in the room. I did my speech. And I thought like, oh my gosh, it went really well. Everybody loved it. Then afterward, everybody went to go see Serena Williams speak, but I was so hyped up. I just sat in the cafeteria to eat by myself. And these two sisters were sitting there. They were like, oh, hey, can we sit with you? I said, sure. These two young girls. And they said, we were so mad that your room got packed, but thank goodness, we were in the overflow. And I was like, oh, yeah. What? And then she kept saying it like, I wasn't able to get into your room, but we were in the overflow. And I'm like, what is she talking about? So I was like, wait, what overflow? She said, oh, girl, your room was packed. So they opened up the room next to it for 200 people. And that was the overflow room. And we were sitting watching you on a screen. I wept. So like from the overflow, it was, can you imagine from being all the way at the end of the conference, the wrong title, that lady telling me that they had me on the wrong stage. Right. And not only was my room full, the room next to it, people were just watching me on video in the overflow room. And when I tell you, when you do what you're called to do, God makes overflow for you. I mean, it's just, it is set aside for you.
I'm getting on my knees tonight. And I'm going to God, and I have to ask God to I just need a quick realignment. Like, I think I'm leaning into I know I'm leaning into my purpose, but now I need a little bit more being direct and ask for obedience, but now asking for obedience and having the discernment that God gives to you now and actually choosing what God wants versus what you want is the real battle a lot of times we all face. And I'm guilty of it too. As much as people look to me and they think of me, people always joke around, Doom, Pastor Doom. But it's like, the discernment part, the ability to really take time to hear God is so important. And I think that's like a big battle for us all, even especially just as entrepreneurs. Just in our community overall, obedience. Like, I think when this run is done, which it'll never be done, I think the next thing is now it's almost like Star Wars, how they did the first one and then they came out with the other one that was the pre-story. Now the next book that Tiffany needs to write is called Obedience. Because there's so much room for people to understand before all of this. Before this comes the ground foundation of the obedience. Because a lot of times people trying to get good with money, but at the same time, they haven't been obedient to something that God has put on their heart, whether it's like even the separation of certain people, places, and things. One of the biggest questions, and I'm trying to make sure I get through some of the main things. Why is it so hard for us in our community to become financially whole?
So, well, there are systemic things that are put in place, like the appraisal system, for example, for your home. Black and brown homes are underappraised by 23% on average than white homes. So, and a home is a cornerstone for wealth. So my parents bought their home in Westfield when I was 9 years old. They bought it for $250,000. That was big money back then. Right. Now that same house, like 20 years later, is worth $700,000. Right. So that a home is a cornerstone for wealth, potentially, because of that ability to appreciate to that amount. Now, if they tell someone your $700,000 home is actually worth $650,000, that's $50,000 taken from your family. Right. So there's systemic things like that. One, and then on two, you're paid less at work. Right. So on average, so you're getting paid less, and then the things that you own are valued at less. So you're losing on both ends. So a lot of it is that. And then some things too is just I remember reading a story, reading some sort of article about why so many Black people don't know how to swim. Yeah. And it was because there was this concerted effort, we know like in the 60s where we were not allowed, the integration, was not allowed. Right. And so the access to pools, excuse me, was denied inner city kids. So you have this whole sect of people who didn't have access to pools. So if you meet Black people who grew up next to bodies of water, they swim. Right. Right. I am one of them. I am still one of those people that do not know how to swim. And I've made it my agenda to learn how to swim before 40. Yeah, I'm telling you, because it's access to resources, access to knowledge, but I'm so glad that things are changing, because you have your podcast. So I have a podcast called Brown Ambition, where we talk about money and career and stuff with especially for women. So now that access is broadening, there's access to courses now, because before, if you could not physically get to a place, you would not have access. But because everything is online now, social media, which we reign on social media, has allowed us to have access. So you're seeing this uptick in Black and brown people talking about money, learning about money, teaching about money, because the access has shifted our ability to get knowledge. And so so we are able to, although the systemic things must be addressed. I worked with a friend of mine, Assemblywoman Angela V. McKnight, to get the Budgetnista law passed, which financial education is now mandatory for middle schools in New Jersey. But we're also working on a law for the appraisal process, making it illegal to underappraise someone's home based upon their race, their gender. And so it's a mixture of having things like that come in, but also like, let's normalize having these types of conversations. It's why I wrote Get Good with Money in that way, because I wanted a really good teacher makes teachers out of their students.
Right.
Like that's, you know what I mean? Like it's not an easy thing to be able, because if I can teach you so well that you feel comfortable in sharing that knowledge, that means I've done my job times 10. Because now you then become the Budgetnista in your life. You read it and you're like, I got it. So the next time your brother comes to you and it's like, yo, I'm having a hard time. It's like, nah, bro, you don't need whole life insurance. Here's why. You see? Like, I remember, like, I was telling my husband, he wanted to buy I don't know, a Mustang, something. He already has a nice car. And so he wanted to buy another car. And I was like, well, babe, you know, we have this property that we bought aside from our house, and he and his homeboy, they're fixing it up. They're going to rent it out. I said, that is an asset, you know, and a car, you know, over time, really, it's like, well, I guess a car could be called a depreciating asset, but let's just say for now, a car is like a liability because it doesn't really make you any money. Right. And so I told him, you know, it's ideal that you let your assets pay for your liabilities. Meaning, instead of you just buying the car, have one of our investments generate enough money so you can get that car, so our wealth does not diminish. And so he was like, oh, that's smart. So, you know, I fix up the house. A gift to myself is I save some money from the rent. I put it toward getting a car, and then we could put some more money toward getting the next property. I said, exactly. So then I heard him on the phone talking to one of his boys. And so if you know me, my husband, he was born and raised in Newark, projects, just like, you know, he was like, nah, yo, let me tell you something. Nah, yo, you got it all wrong. You need to let your assets pay for your liability. That's where you messed up. I was like, yes, because that meant that he understood it well enough that he could pass on the knowledge to someone who I don't have access to.
Yeah, and that's one of the hardest things out here, because a lot of times I've been places where I've learned something and somebody's like, yo, tell me about that thing. And I'd be like, well, it's
yes.
I think you should probably go look up online, right?
Yes.
Because I can't tell, but like, because the way somebody told me,
yes,
was probably not the easiest way for me to digest it. And I probably haven't fully grasped it anyway, but I have an idea of it. Nah, that's good, man. That's super good, because a lot of people, I'm telling you, can't pass on information. If we can't pass it on to our friends, we can't pass it on to our children.
And it's also too means that you might not have the grasp to really make it even work for yourself. So yes, that's why I wrote Get Good with Money in the way that I did. I wanted to write it in a way, and I wanted to give you tools that you're able to pass on and pass on and pass on. Because I don't, you know, I want 10 years from now. You know how they talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Yeah, you said want this in 10 years from now. This is Get Good with Money. This is gonna ring right there with them.
And that's what I wanted.
It's gonna be Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's gonna be what is there? There's
the 4-hour work week. I like that one.
You have the 4-hour work week. Then you have Get Good with Money. Right there, you have the what's the love languages book?
5 love languages.
All of that, they're gonna be right there next to each other.
That's what I'm wanting, and so that's what I'm working toward, and that's what I asked God for. That I get to leave a legacy of financial education specifically for our people who oftentimes are left out of the financial conversation. But like me being on the cover is permission to say, no, you belong in this section of the bookstore. You're looking for money books? Yes, come here, get mine, get other ones. You belong here. The information here is for you as well, you know?
How important for you not only as a Nigerian second generation Nigerian, correct?
No, my parents were born in Nigeria. I was born here.
Okay, so that would make you first generation, right? First generation Nigerian woman. How is it important for you to just to leave your legacy as a woman who has made such a difference impact-wise, not just in our country, not just in our community, in the world?
It feels really special. I was conscious of the legacy because so my father doesn't have any sons. And, as a Nigerian man, that's a hard pill to swallow.
Right.
And is. So, no, for real, right? Because
I know. I think my father who's passed away to this day, like one of my things is like, if I had 2 girls, I'm going to have another, I'm going to keep trying to like.
And we're 5. So my mother was like, apparently God said no.
I remember when my mother found out information from her what is it called? But my little brother, who's the 4th one, when she got the what you call it, gram back, because anytime I'm on here, words just slip my mind.
I know what you mean.
But when she basically got the gender of the baby, I just remember hearing her crying. She was like bawling, and
she was like another boy.
My father went over there to like comfort. He was like, "Get off me! Don't talk to me."
She wanted a girl.
She wanted a girl. We got
all them boys. I know. So So I remember thinking that I remember telling myself, before I get married, I want to have a book out. It's one of the reasons why I put out the 1 Week Budget, my first book, because I wanted the name Aliche. That's my dad's last name. I wanted it to be on a book because even though he doesn't have a son, at least his name can still live on. Yes. And so to have Aliche on this book and for it to have done what it does, what it's done, for it to be a New York Times bestseller and all these other things, like I feel like although he doesn't have a son, his name gets to live on indefinitely. That Aliche will always be a name that people say, oh yes, Aliche. So it was like this, that was like my gift to him, to be able to have his name continue to live on, even if it doesn't live on through his son, it gets to live on through the things I've been able to put out into the world.
Right. And that is done. I tell you that. There's no question about it. Like, my last name's Thompson. If I end up having all girls, I pray that my girl is able to create such a legacy that you have done. Just to touch on, because I know time is against us. How important for you is it keeping God in the center of everything you do?
Well, it's critical because nothing works if I don't. Mm-hmm. Whenever I know that I remember writing in my journal years ago when I was going through like a really hard time. And I was like, Tiffany, you forget every single time you go through a really hard time. It's always the same reason. Right. Because you have strayed from God. That's it. Right. And I wrote in my journal, happiness is closeness with God. That I have been happy when I was broke. I have been happy when I was, it's not about, because you keep telling yourself, it's because of this and my struggle. That you are your happiest when you are in alignment and closest with God. That is literally it. Period. And so that's why, like, I don't always get it right because I'm human and we forget sometimes, and you veer to the left and then you wonder why life is not feeling as fulfilled. And God's just looking at you like, look at her once again.
Doing your own thing. Doing your own thing. Go ahead. Do your thing.
Real, right? Exactly. Go carry the whole bag by yourself. If you would just let me help you, or sometimes you're such in a rush. If you see kids, you want to go outside now. If you would just wait for me, you wouldn't have to walk the whole way.
Yo, we know that feeling when we're out of the will of God. Mm-hmm. We know that. We know the feeling. It eats at you. You wake up, you hear it. You're like, man, I got to get back in the will of God.
Yes.
It takes time. It takes prayer. It takes fasting.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Of gratitude, all of those things.
Yes. And so for me, it's critically important to stay as close to God as possible, because really that's the only way to sustain joy, peace, and happiness.
Yeah.
And then remembering that he always wants what's best for me, even though I might think like, well, I'm not gonna be able to have any fun if I do what he said. And that's just not true.
Right. I'm telling you, and that is one of the biggest things for me when it comes to being this unconventional Christian, why it's so important that I express to people that you can still be lit and hot for God at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's so important because people feel like, oh my God, if I become focused on God, I got to be so corny. I got to sit there. I got to stay in the house. I can't be on the gram. I can't laugh at this. I can't go have fun with my friends. You can still be lit and hot for God. You know what I mean? Because I think that it's so important. And with you specifically, like I see how you move and I see when you talk. And the great thing about it is that you don't beat people down with God. Like it just seeps out in it seeps out in your message, because it's important for people to feel more like, it's one of the big things for me is that like I'm more concerned about relationships than religion. You know what I mean? Because religion has scared people away for so long. So relationships are so important when you can have that layman's term conversation. That's the same thing with this. I think the science of things, the complicated part of things is what makes people run away from the knowledge, because they automatically feel like I can't do it. So yeah. All right, because I know time is against us, and I'm trying my best. You know, I had 97 questions set for you, but it's all good. There's always room for part 2. So what I'm gonna do is that we do this thing which is called the rapid fire question, and I'm gonna just run through a few for you. First one: Nigerian movie or American soaps?
Nigerian movie.
Favorite finance book for you?
Get Good with Money.
Get Good with Money. I love it. Number 2. What's your second great finance book?
Okay, The Automatic Millionaire by David Bach.
Boom. I gotta get that. $1 million cash or $1 million credit?
$1 million cash.
Talk dirty. Well, you know what? Because you know when you listen to some of these gurus, and you know, I know you just said that.
Yes.
About the gurus. No gurus. We ain't rocking with the gurus. But that's the first thing they'll tell you: $1 million credit, man. You don't need the cash. Cash ain't nothing.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I'm not saying that credit is not a useful tool, but you know, because you can leverage $1 million cash into having you have access with credit. People love to loan you money when they see you have money. So your $1 million cash means you can have $1 million cash, and then you can say, hey, I want to borrow $1 million, and they look to see you have $1 million cash. And so they say, yeah, so now you have 2 million. The money you borrow, and then you see what I mean? Like, yeah.
That's a no-brainer right there.
Yeah, so that's like when people say, would you rather have $100,000 or 800 credit score? I'm like, what kind of question is that? $100,000. At 800 credit, like, you know how you can raise your credit score to 800 maybe in a few months with some free tricks? Give me my money, you know, like.
Right.
Yes.
If you won the lottery, what's the first thing you're doing with the money?
I am sitting down with my financial planner and mapping out investments. Like I would be pouring in, because I already have a plan in place. I would just activate my plan more, like, okay, here's an extra, you know, here's extra money to put toward the plan.
Perfect. And the last question, this one is maybe a new question for our podcast. It's the unconventional question of the day. How important is it for couples to have financial conversations before marriage? And second part of that is, how soon should those conversations begin?
Very important. My husband and I started having those conversations when we were boyfriend and girlfriend, just probably like a couple months in. I think I just randomly asked him, what's your credit score? He was like, what?
Right.
It wasn't that great, but we started to fix it then. So, and it took a while. Here's why you want to have it as soon as you can, even if you don't end up marrying that person, because if you do end up marrying that person, we already had years of practice talking about money. So by the time we got married, it wasn't this bone of contention. Then I was able to bring an outside source, Anjali, who's our certified financial planner, and we meet with her like about every month or every other month. And he sits and he listens and asks questions. And he's like, oh, Anjali said she needs this for the insurance. But those questions, like, imagine if we had to just start. It would take him probably years for me to get him to convince him we need to meet with somebody. No, we got the kinks out earlier. So the earlier, the better. The financial conversations don't have to be like hard ones. It could be, let's save for vacation. That's a financial conversation.
Right.
You know, it could be, you know, like how you buy your, you know, like what type of financing you getting for your car. So financial conversations can be light, but you're wanting to practice having those conversations. So by the time you need to have the hard ones, you already have practice under your belt.
Wow, that requires some levels of vulnerability and transparency. Yes. And that's another thing that I find that holds us back in our community, because a lot of people are not vulnerable and transparent with each other. So especially in couples, people aren't being 100% transparent. So you don't really realize what somebody's weakness is until you're so far in. And
you have to create a safe space, right? So that's the key.
Yeah.
Like if you're wanting someone to be vulnerable with you, it's like, you know, you open the stage with being vulnerable, because my husband wasn't totally open, but I would be vulnerable, like, oh, I made this mistake and I made that mistake, and here's a safe space and there's no judgment here. And like I said, we started with light things. Like I was going on vacation and he was like, I want to go too. I said, well, here's how I save. You want me to show you? Right. And it was like, okay. Right. You know, that was an easy thing, because there's no fussing about saving for vacation.
Right.
And then he was like, oh, that's dope. And I remember he wanted to get a car again. And I told him, I'm like, yeah, but New York has these properties that are tax deeds and they go for $10,000. So yeah, you could get that car, or we could save and get one of these $10,000 properties. And he was like, okay, got the property. And now he's like, you know what I mean? So it made you build upon those easier financial conversations. And now, we talk life insurance, estate planning. It's nothing. It's boom, boom, boom. We don't argue over money, because, but in the beginning, it was tough, but we've been together like 7 years now. So now the money conversations are easier. So
I love it.
If you guys are wanting to get good with money, well, let me share this too. So that way people know what are the 10 simple steps to financial wholeness.
Right.
Budgeting, savings, debt, credit, learning to earn. Then it's investing for both wealth and retirement. It's insurance, net worth, your professional financial team, and estate planning. Those are the 10 steps to financial wholeness. And it is the financial wholeness is when these 10 steps come together to create a strong foundation that the rest of your financial life is built on. That's what financial wholeness is. It's the foundation of the rest of your financial life. And I wish financial wholeness on everyone. If you wanted to get the book, it's available at getgoodwithmoney.com. Purchase it, get it, do, book clubs with your friends.
Yes, this is my book club next month.
Oh, awesome.
It is part of the prayer room. This is our book. This is part of our book club next month.
Oh, I love that. Let me know. I'll pop in.
That. I'm gonna have you hop in too.
Yes, I will. I'll hop in.
Tiff, I appreciate you. I thank you. I can't wait for part 2 to this, because it's gonna be a part 2 to this. Yes. And I think that I would love, I have something brewing in my head. And I'm gonna hit you because I need mentorship. We're gonna talk about that too. All right. Thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too.
This is another amazing episode of the Unconventional Christian Podcast.